I've got a 2.5 centimeter ruler, and all I'm doing is scoring some marks along here because I want them to look like big square marble tiles. To do my marbling effect, I've just put some titanium white and some Mars black, and all I'm going to be doing is just starting to paint it all over and then swirling it all so that I'm not actually moving my paintbrush as such, I'm just rolling it into the paint so I can get a bit of a marble looking effect. And if it's too dark, you can just add whatever other colour that you want. For me, that's a wee bit dark, so I'm going to add a wee bit more white, and that's all I'm doing. And now I'm putting a dark grey line on the border of my tiles so that I can paint this part all white. So that's what the final look looks like. I'll quite a close up so you can see how beautiful it turned out. On my pathway, I'm doing 1 centimeter increments all the way down because I want them to look like bricks, and then I'm going to be offsetting them so that they are one like that, and then the next one will be cut like that, and then this one will go in between. To paint my pathway, I've mixed 2 different colour greys, which I've just used the black and the white, and all I'm doing now is I'm taking the darkest one and I'm just going over where I've scored, just so that it's a little bit darker when I actually paint. I'm not worried about covering it completely, just as long as it's a little bit darker underneath. So when I go over again with the lighter colour, the grooves are a little bit dark. And now I'm just taking the lighter of the greys and then just going over everything. So it'll come up with a little bit of darkness underneath it. So that's what it looks like at the moment. And now I'm taking a slightly lighter colour grey, and all I'm doing is going to be doing a small kind of like 7 on the right hand side of each of the bricks. Which makes them look a little bit more 3-dimensional. So that's what the little pathway is looking like at the moment. And now I'm taking a slightly darker colour grey, and just on the left hand corner of each of the bricks I'm just putting a small little line like that. And I'm going all the way down. So that's what it looks like with the darker colour grey on as well. Now we're just going to finish off the sides. For my flower bed I'm using burnt umber and burnt sienna, and I'm just going to be painting my little flower bed that goes around like that. So I've just put some burnt umber down, and now I'm just adding a little bit of burnt sienna so that I can mix them together to give me a nice blend of colour, just so that it looks a little bit like dirt. And then on the inside one only, I'm doing a very thin black line like that. My flooring is all dry, and now I'm going to put the polish on. And I'm using Brilliance, and all I'm going to do is decant it into a little pot, and I'm using a chalk wipe, and all you do is just wipe it all over. To make my flower bed, I'm using a mixture of chamomile tea and black tea, and I've just put it down like that so that it looks like the plants have all died in my flower bed. And to make my little flower bed, I'm using these findings, and I'm just connecting them together with a jump ring so that the flower bed will look like that when I glue it in. I've got some dried gypsophila or baby's breath, which I'm going to be taking small bunches of and gluing it into my little flower bed. To make some of the other shrubs that I'm going to be using, I've got some of this natural rope, and all I've done is I've teased it out to make like little bushes, and on some of them I'm taking them and then just dipping them into some glue, using PVA glue for this. And then I've got an assortment of different size polystyrenes, and I'm putting it in the really, really fine one, just like that, so I can get a few like little white blobs on it that look like snow. I've got this small section over here that I want to do, so I'm going to be placing the fake snow on there. To make my fake snow for all my craft projects and dioramas, this particular one actually dries hard, so it's really nice, and I like to have the one that is a slightly bluish colour. So I've got cobalt blue and titanium white, and all I've done is decanted some onto the greaseproof paper, and I'm just going to mix a bit of the blue into the white so that I get a bit of a baby blue colour. So it's just off-white now, so as you can see it's just a little tiny bit on the blue side. So we put that aside until we need that. I'm using a little container so that I can close it because it's got a lid, and all I'm doing is using some baking soda. I don't actually measure exactly what quantity I need because I make it up as I need it. So I need a fair bit for this one. So this one I'm putting in 2 dessert spoons of baking soda, and I'm using this Hobby craft glue, which is a PVA glue, and I'm just going to put some in there, enough to make it to the consistency that I want. So once again, as I said, I don't measure because you can have really thin or you can have it quite thick. I normally use about 1/3 of what is in my cup, so I'm just going to pour a little bit in. Less is always better, unless you want to make up a whole lot. And then all you have to do, I'm just using a stirring stick, is just mix it all together until you get a nice smooth consistency. So as you can see, that's quite thick still, so I'm just going to add a bit more glue. It's still a little bit thick. You want to have it a bit like just thicker than a pancake batter. If you have it thick like this, it makes really nice big chunky pieces of snow. I want to have it just a little bit thinner than that, so I'm going to add just a wee bit more glue. And now we're just about at the consistency that we want. So now I'm going to take my paint and just scrape it off. And put it in there. Make sure you put your paint in before you get to your final stage, because the paint does thin it out a little bit. Not an awful lot, but just a little bit. So as you can see, this is quite white, and that's where the paint's gone in, so it's a nice blue. For some of my projects I leave it thick and chunky like that, but for this particular one that I'm doing, I want it a little bit thinner than that. So just a wee bit more glue. Quite happy with that consistency now. It's quite nice and smooth. And now, because this particular snow that I'm making, I want it to be for a Christmas decoration, so I'm going to be using these rather beautiful coloured white iridescent glitter, and then I'm just going to add a little bit to my mixture. So you can see now it's all nice and sparkly. I don't know whether you can actually see that. And then with this particular one, it's better if you can actually heat it up with a heat gun, because once the glue gets hot it starts puffing up, which makes it look a little bit more natural. So we just put a wee bit of this on here. I don't know whether you're actually going to see it puffing up. I will give it a go and see. Now, it's preferable not to put your heat gun too close. Try and keep it a little bit further away so that you don't burn it. And I'm putting it on my low setting. To see how nicely it puffs up and makes it look really real. So I'm just going to do a little bit more and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. So now that it's all puffed up, I'm going to leave it overnight to dry completely. You can see my snow is all dried nice and hard. And I've just put a few little trees in just to decorate the snow a bit. I'm using this rather beautiful gold ribbon. It's not quite a ribbon, it's more of a plastic kind of ribbon, which I'm going to be placing along my balustrade all the way around. To make my little sled, I've drawn a design onto a piece of paper, which I'm going to be using as a template, and I'm just going to cut it out on some cardboard, which I've taken from a soft drink can box, because the box is quite nice and thin, and I'm just going to trace that on there and cut two pieces out like that. I've got my two pieces for my sled cut out, and now I'm taking a piece of cardboard which is 2 centimeters wide, and I've bent it at 2 centimeters, 6 centimeters and 4 centimeters so that I can glue it on the inside of my sled like that. And I'm going to use hot glue to do that. I've cut my little sled out and I've glued it all together, and now I'm just going to be painting it. So to cover up all the darkness on the inside, I'm going to first paint it white, and then I'll paint everything red. My little sled is all painted red, and I've taken a pen and just drawn very hard onto the cardboard, so I've got a bit of an embossing finish on it, and I'm just going to be painting that gold. I want to put glitter on my little sled, so I'm using this extra strong PVA glue, and I've just got a skewer that I'm drawing around, and I've got this really nice looking gold glitter which I'm now going to sprinkle on top of that. I'm just dusting the excess off so that it's only on the glued part that we just did. To make the legs for my sled, I've just taken a piece of cardboard which is 2 centimeters wide by 1.5 centimeters, and I've just cut the center part out of it, and this part on the leg is 2.5 centimeters, and I'm just folding it, and then I'm going to paint it black so I can paint it gold afterwards. To make the skis for my little sled, I'm going to be using this craft wire, and it's a very soft craft wire, and then I'm going to be just curling it so that I can get something that looks like a sled, so it'll be like that, and I'm making 2 of them obviously. I've cut 2 strips of cardboard which are 2 millimeters wide by 4 centimeters long, and I'm going to be gluing those across the top of my sled like that underneath, and then bending them over. So I'm just using some hot glue to do that. I've measured how far I want my sled to be sitting on my little skis at the bottom, and now I'm going to be taking some hot glue and I'm just going to be gluing them on. I'm working on a clipboard so that I can place them exactly in line with each other so that they're at the same distance in the front. I've got them all glued together, and now I'm just going to take my little slide and put it on the top and glue that little piece on. I'm using hot glue to do that as well. To make my seat that goes inside my little sled, I've cut a piece of cardboard which is 1.5 centimeters by 2 centimeters by 3 centimeters, and that's going to just go inside like that. And then I'm going to be just painting this little part white because I'm going to be gluing some ribbon onto the seat. For the chair I'm going to be using this velvet ribbon, and all I'm doing is cutting a small piece out and then just gluing it on. So there's the little chair, and now we can just glue that into the sled like that. So there's my little sled, and now we can put a few little decorations on the side. To the little sled I just added some little gold stars. I'm just taking 2 little silver sequins and gluing on the front of my little sled. To make my little bag for my sled, I'm just using this rather thick ribbon, and all I'm doing is cutting 8 centimeters off. Traditionally the bags are round, but I'm just keeping it like that. I've got this really fine gold thread, and all I'm doing is taking about 40 centimeters of it, folding it over, and then folding it over again so that I can make a cord. Now I like to just twist it by rolling it along my leg, and then when it's twisted completely, then you just collapse it over each other and it'll just wind around each other like that. So you land up with a little piece that looks like a little rope like that. And then all we're going to do is take out a little piece. I've got a little bit of scrap material that I'm just going to put a wee bit inside just to hold it a nice shape, and then just fold it in like a little fan, and then we take out a little cord, make a loop, put it over the top, and then just pull the 2 little cords tight on the side. And then just do another knot so it doesn't come undone. And I'm placing the little cords so that they are going to face in the front like that. And then we can just trim that down, and that's all I'm doing for my little bag to go into my sled, because my sled is not very big, so I'm just putting it in like that. And now we can put our little bag in. For my big main Christmas tree, I've just used some of those Christmas trees that you buy that have got all the snow and that on, and then I've taken a small bit of fancy elastic and just draped it around my tree, and the excess lighting that I had, that I threaded through all along the back of the lighting there, I've just gone around the tree with that as well. And then I've covered some tiny little pieces of polystyrene just in some Christmas wrapping paper and placed them all in front of the trees. So there's some over there, and going up onto the top one, I've placed some over there. Once again, just those small little trees that you buy. And then I've made some miniature crackers as well. I've taken a Christmas decoration that goes on the top of a Christmas cake, and I've just added a few little trees to the side, and I've just placed that on there. My battery pack that is going to be placed up against the wall like this. Got this really nice ball, which is just a clear Christmas ball, and I've poked a hole in the bottom so I can put a light up underneath that. so it makes it look quite nice and pretty. And this is the little box that I made to conceal my battery pack. The other thing that I've taken is I've got these rather beautiful looking stickers, and I just put one on the front of the balcony on that side and another one onto the little light box that I made to house the lighting. To make this one, I've just taken pearls, gold beads and a silver bead and a tiny piece of gold Christmas tree and glued them all together to make a decoration like that, which stands just in front of the light box. On the balconies I've also put 2 little trees on the right hand side balcony behind that beautiful gold ribbon. I've got this rather cute little plaster of Paris Father Christmas that I'm going to be painting. To make the handles for my doors, I've got an assortment of beads which I'm going to just be assembling, and I've got some of these hoop wires. Let's just take 2 of those. Which are quite nice and long. And then I've got some jump rings, and I'm going to be using a 6mm copper wire which is silver coated like that. I've threaded my beads so that they're like that, so I'm using one tiny little bead, and then I've got a ring, and I've got this beautiful flower which is like a rose, and then just some flat ones, another flower, similar flat one, a round one, and then this small round bead that goes at the top, tiny one like that, and then like that, and I'm just threading 2 of them onto my wire so that I've got the exact same pattern. I've got a very small round nose pliers, and all I'm doing is taking my strand of wires so that I can make a loop, so I'm going for the absolute smallest that I can get without having anything poking at the top. You're just going to rotate it. When you can't go any further, move the pliers and rotate it again so that you've got a really small little loop like that. And now I'm going to be attaching one of my jump rings to that. And then before I close it, I'm adding one of my other pieces so that I've got the 2 in place. And then we can just close that up as tight as what you can get it. And now I've just pushed my set of beads up to the top, and now we're going to be making a small circle at the bottom here as well. So taking as close to you can get, and then just doing a 90-degree angle first, and then wrap your wire around the tip. So you've got a really small little loop at the end like that. So now I've got a dangling handle, and now we can trim that wire off and then do the other one exactly the same. On the other side where I've got the looped ring, I'm taking one of these backings for stud earrings, and I'm turning it around the wrong way and threading it onto my shaft like that, right up to the end, so that I can attach this to the wall. But I'm going to be painting this little piece gold as well. And there's the completed advent calendar dollhouse. That's my little Christmas tree all lit up with the Christmas presents in front. It's rather magical at night. Thank you so much for watching.